It's a Thursday edition of the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's a post-game edition, it's a game day edition, it's a game wrap-up, and a game preview edition. We got a lot going on the Morning Pitt today in the aftermath of yesterday's ACC Tournament game and ahead of today's ACC Tournament game. It's all happening. It's coming in fast, and we've got a lot to discuss. So I appreciate you tuning in this morning. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So we put all our video content, these daily Morning Pitt videos, post-game press conferences, interviews, midweek interviews, and of course where we do our live streams. We do our regular Wednesday night live stream every week at 8:30. We didn't do it last night because we did a post-game show that started around 5 o'clock. We're doing post-game shows after every Pitt game this postseason, so make sure you tune in for all of those. And we don't always know exactly what time those shows are going to start, so the best thing you can do is click subscribe to our YouTube channel and then turn on notifications so you get an alert sent to your phone whenever we start that post-game show. Now, yesterday we were able to time it up pretty well. Pitt's game tipped off a little after 2:30, but gave us about 10 minutes to get ready to start the show at 5 o'clock. We went from 5 to 6, and then we all got done and went and had dinner. It was a nice evening. Tonight, hopefully, we'll go the same way. We'll see exactly how the schedule works out. If the early game goes long, or Pitt's game goes long, it might be a changed up time. So make sure you just subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications. Then you won't miss anything right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So Pitt beats Georgia Tech yesterday, 89-81. It was a 13-point game at halftime, and it would be an 8-point game at the end. Georgia Tech battled back quickly from that 13-point halftime deficit. As a matter of fact, pretty much erased it over the course of the first 2:45 or so of the second half. A 10-2 run leading to a Pitt timeout cut the lead to 5 points. And then eventually, the run extended to a 21-6 run that led to Georgia Tech taking the lead with just under 13 minutes left to play in the game at 52-50. Now, this is after Pitt had taken a 15-point lead in the first half. Pitt took a 13-point lead at halftime, and there they are just over 7 minutes into the second half, and they're losing. It's 52-50. And Pitt pretty much spent the remaining 12 minutes of the half, the remaining 13 minutes of the half, battling back, trying to stay on top and trying to hold off Georgia Tech and not let the Yellow Jackets win the game, which would have been an epic collapse for Pitt and almost certainly would have kept them out of the NCAA tournament as another bad loss, compounding the loss at Notre Dame and the loss to Florida State earlier in the season. But that didn't happen. Pitt held them off. Pitt held off Georgia Tech, and even though it was tight, and even though it was tense and probably anxiety-inducing, Pitt came out with an 8-point win. And, in the aftermath of the game, I think one of the immediate reactions was, wow, they almost blew it. That was an ugly performance. Geez, what a mess. Boy, that looked bad. And it's true. There were some things about this game that were pretty bad. I think maybe the most striking thing to me, maybe the most negative thing I would say, is that they came out in the second half and Georgia Tech was the team with more energy, with more intensity, with more focus, and they were playing harder than Pitt coming out of halftime. And it didn't make any sense. You remember, Georgia Tech is the team that's played extremely thin, basically only playing 5 guys plus one off the bench for a handful of minutes. That's what they did on Tuesday against Florida State, played guys almost 40 minutes. And then they come into this Pitt game, guys play almost the entire first half, and they looked like they were playing that many minutes in less than 24 hours. They looked tired. They looked run down, and Pitt seemed to be able to get whatever it wanted on offense in the first half because Georgia Tech looked like it was pretty run down. And those guys looked like they were beat physically. And so to come out in the second half, when you're holding on to a lead of a baker's dozen, and the other team has been, seems to be slowing down a bit, to come out and get outplayed and out-hustled and outworked, particularly in the first few minutes of the half, it's pretty disappointing. Committed, 4 turnovers in the first 3 minutes, sloppy passes, careless with the ball, and led to a bunch of points for Georgia Tech and really put the game in jeopardy. Like, if the final 12 minutes were anxiety-inducing and tight and living and dying on every possession, it's because of how poorly Pitt played in the first 3 to 6 minutes of the second half and how well Georgia Tech played. Georgia Tech took advantage of Pitt's sloppiness and carelessness, and they were able to turn that into, they were able to make it a game as a result. And so I think that created the biggest impression from the game in the immediate aftermath. But I did some math, right? Every now and then I like to get into the numbers and add it up a little bit. And there was, at the very beginning of the game, Georgia Tech led for about 59 seconds or so. They were up 8-6 before Greg Elliott hit a 3 to make it 9-8. And we'll talk about Greg Elliott. We've got a lot to say about Greg Elliott. So they had led for about 59 seconds in that segment. And then, like I say, in the second half, they took a lead 52-50. And they held that lead for 10 seconds before Federico made a dunk. That was the last time Georgia Tech led in the game. They led in this game, all added up together, for 1 minute and 9 seconds. 40 minutes of basketball, and Georgia Tech led for 1 minute and 9 seconds. A very nice 69 seconds. And in the second half, where it seemed like Pitt was getting outplayed and Pitt was getting beat and Georgia Tech was a better team, and ultimately Georgia Tech did outscore Pitt in the second half. But in the second half, where it seemed like, I think, for a lot of Pitt fans and people watching the game and some of the reactions I was reading, it seemed like Pitt was playing from behind the entire second half. Georgia Tech led for 10 seconds. 10 seconds. Pitt, there was a little bit of time where this game was tied, about 30 seconds, 50, maybe about 80 seconds. So 1950 minus 50, 18. For about 18 minutes and 30 seconds of the second half, Pitt led. There was a 10-second stretch where Georgia Tech led. Now, they had to outscore Pitt significantly, 21-6, to get to that point, to go from being down 13 to being up 2. They had to have, a significant scoring run. And so when you're watching a team go through 7 minutes of basketball getting outscored 21-6, it's going to feel like they're losing the game. And at that point they were down 52-50, but it did not last. And here's the biggest takeaway from this game. And I think you can look at it and say Pitt blew this big lead. You can look at it and say Pitt was never able to fully put Georgia Tech away. They weren't able to, kind of put their foot on their throat and just shut it down in the second half and just, nail in the coffin, all your different sports cliches that you want to use as far as putting a team away. And you can say they weren't able to do that, and you'd be right. But I think there's another way you can look at it as well. You can look at it like this. Georgia Tech made a serious run at Pitt through this second half, enough to get to the point where they were in the lead. And at that point, where Georgia Tech took the lead and went ahead 52-50, and Pitt's back was truly against the wall, the Panthers responded, and they never let Georgia Tech get in the lead again. They had an answer for everything the Yellow Jackets did. Occasionally, they played some decent defense. They protected the ball. They had 5 turnovers in the second half. 4 of them were in the first 3 minutes, so they protected the ball for the most part the rest of the way. And every time Georgia Tech scored, Pitt was able to answer. In the second half, well, actually, after that point, in the final 13 minutes, after Pitt went down 52-50, which happened on, obviously Georgia Tech made a lot of consecutive baskets, but in those final 12 and a half minutes, Georgia Tech only made consecutive baskets once. That was around the 3.5-minute mark, the 3-minute mark. Pitt was up 77-68. Georgia Tech had a jump shot and a three-pointer and made it 77-73. It was the only time they made consecutive baskets. And some of that was Pitt defense, holding them to not letting them string baskets together. But mostly it was Pitt being able to come up with an answer. Now, Pitt never made any consecutive baskets in that stretch either. They might have once or twice, but it's not like they were putting together large runs either. But when you're ahead, look, whether you're ahead or you're behind, you want to go on runs. You know what I mean? You want to be able to, string together consecutive baskets so you can either catch up or you can extend your lead. I mean, that goes without saying. But I think when you're leading in a game, you really, if nothing else, you want to have an answer for every basket that the other team makes. You want to be able to answer it. So when Georgia Tech, Pitt goes up, Pitt ties the game at 52-52. They take the lead 54. It goes back and forth a little bit. Georgia Tech never gets in the lead, but they're able to tie it once or twice. Around the 9:30 mark, Javon Franklin, who was awesome for Georgia Tech in this game, dunks the ball, and it's 60-59. Pitt's up 60-59 with about 9 minutes to go in the game. And this is the danger zone. This is, the game was on ESPN, so they don't mention the danger zone. If it would have been on the ACC network, they would have talked about the danger zone. This was the danger zone. It's a 60-59 game. Pitt's very much in trouble. And that guy right there who pops up on the screen, Greg Elliott, drains a three. Drains it. 63-59. Huge. Down at the other end, Lance Terry drives, makes a basket. 63-61 is the 2-point game. Jamarius Burton has an answer at the other end for Pitt with a drive for another basket to put the Panthers back up by 4. They get Kyle Sturdivant to get a layup at the other end. It's now a 2-point game again. It's 65-63. We're under 8 minutes. It's coming down to the 7-minute mark. Pitt's got a possession at the other end of the court. They're dribbling around. They're passing. The shot clock is running down. They're running out of time. It's about to go out. It's going to be a shot clock violation or a terrible shot. But Greg Elliott drains a 3. Another one. His third of the game. That might have been his fourth of the game. Forget when he made his fourth. I think that was his fourth of the game. Puts Pitt up by 5 again. And it kept going like that. And when, Georgia Tech did make consecutive baskets, like I say, around the 3.5 and the 3-minute mark, to make it 77-73 game. It's a 4-point game again. Closest it had been since, Elliott hit that 3. Nelly Cummings comes up with a drive for a basket. Stretches the lead back out to 6. Georgia Tech answers. It's down to a 4-point game again. Jamarius Burton gets an and 1. Huge play on a tough shot. Gets the ball to fall. Now it's back up to a 7-point game. Georgia Tech gets another basket. I mean, they keep chipping away. Georgia Tech wouldn't go away. Pitt wasn't playing good enough defense to stop them. And I think at this point, as they're coming down to the 1-minute mark, they want to be careful about fouling. Georgia Tech gets a layup. What happens at the other end? It's 82-77 with a minute to go. I mean, the 5 points can be made up in a minute. But 8 can't. And Blake Hinson drains a 3. I keep saying drains, but Blake Hinson hits a 3. To put Pitt ahead by 8. And ultimately, that was the dagger play. Sometimes I put stars. See, I have different, where they are, over here, like stars. And there's this is the Burton and 1 right there. 2 stars. This is the Hinson 3. Dagger. 3 stars and the dagger play. Pitt was able to hold them off. All right. Now, you'd like to see Pitt go on a big run. You'd like to see Pitt extend the lead out and win by 20. You'd like to see Pitt build on its 13-point halftime lead and not get outscored in the second half and give up 50 points. And, they get outscored 50-45. But you'd like to see them not give up 50 points in the second half. But failing that, if you're not going to do that, if you're not going to put together a big run to extend your lead, the very least you can do is answer everything the other team does so they can never get on a run, so they can never make up ground, so they can never catch you, and so you can hold on and win. And that's what Pitt did. This was a win they absolutely had to get, and they got it. And they advanced to Thursday in the ACC Tournament, the quarterfinals of the ACC Tournament for the first time in 7 years. This season full of things where we're saying the first time in 7 years. Here's a new one. It's the first time they've won 20 games in 7 years. It's the first time they've not had a losing record in the ACC in 7 years. It's the first time they've had a winning record overall in 7 years. It's the first time they're getting to the quarterfinals of the ACC Tournament in 7 years. And maybe, just maybe, and maybe this was the final step. Maybe this locked it in. We'll see what all the bracketologists have to say, but maybe first time in the NCAA tournament in 7 years. That's the path they seem to be on. Now, of course, they have a huge challenge coming today. When they face Duke, 2:30 tip-off, tentatively scheduled. Depends on how long that early game goes. But they're going to get Duke today. And we know what happened in that last Duke game. Pitt took an 11-point lead into halftime, got absolutely destroyed by the Blue Devils in the second half. Gave up 45 points, only scored 26 in the second half. Duke got 24 offensive rebounds. Pitt had 28 total rebounds. Duke had 24 offensive rebounds. Only turned it into 19 second chance points, but all those extra possessions. And it was really a combination of things. I mean, Pitt couldn't stop Kyle Filipowski. He had 28 points and 15 rebounds. Ryan Young had 10 rebounds. Somebody else. Oh, Tyrese Proctor went. Thought somebody went off from 3. Somebody sort of unexpected. I forget. Proctor was only one of 4 in that game, but it was a bloodbath in the second half, and it was the offensive rebounds. It was the way they defended Pitt. I think, and I was reading the message boards a little bit, last night after the game, see what people were saying and what they thought about this Duke game, and there's this feeling that Pitt should just let it fly. Like, this is a team that wins with offense. You have to try to defend and rebound. You're not very good at it, so just shoot. You know what I mean? Blake Hinson, Greg Elliott, who had a huge game yesterday, 4 of 4 from 3. After really a couple of games where he struggled, really came up in the clutch. Federico is going to have a nightmare matchup. I mean, this was a nightmare matchup for him in the first game. What did he even end up with? 4 points and 4 rebounds in 23 minutes against Duke. Guillermo Diaz-Graham played 2. Federico didn't foul out. He had 4 fouls. Guillermo fouled out in 12 minutes, 2 points and 2 rebounds. I mean, this is just a nightmare matchup for Federico. He had a good matchup, I think a favorable matchup against Georgia Tech, and he was certainly able to exploit that and have a huge game. I mean, maybe the best game he's played all season, certainly offensively. But this isn't going to be his game. This is going to be Jamarius Burton trying to drive and draw traffic into the paint so he can kick out to Blake Hinson and Greg Elliott and Nelly Cummings and Nike Sabandi. Sabandi's going to have to do self-creation and make a lot of plays himself. And Elliott and Hinson have to have the quick trigger. And they've had it all season. I feel like there's been some hesitation in recent games. And maybe that's just the way they're being defended. But they need to put the shots up. Pitt's best chance at beating Duke today is scoring a bunch. Yeah, and that's not like a stupid basketball analysis. Hey, you got to score more points than the other team. But I mean, I don't think you can go into this game expecting to win it with defense and rebounding. You have to go into this game expecting to just score 90. And that should probably be Pitt's approach every game from here on out. Just try to get to 90. I mean, that's the goal. And hope you can get there and hang on, and try to get it. That's how I think they should go about it. But we'll see what approach Jeff Capel takes, and we'll also see what approach Duke takes as far as defending Pitt. I think Jamarius Burton is playing. He's on a mission right now. I think Greg Elliott feels his groove a little bit more. Again, I think Nike Sabandi is a guy who can do a lot of things and play well. I think he's liable to go off at any time. And I think Blake Hinson, if he can get rolling, can make a lot of shots. But this is going to be a tough matchup. I think this is one of the toughest matchups in the conference for Pitt. Other teams might match up better with Duke, but Pitt doesn't really match up with them all that well. But at this point, you'd like to think they've done enough to play themselves into the ACC tournament. One of the challenges, and I talked about this on the Morning Pitt yesterday, is they haven't had a lot of opportunities for good wins. Dating back to February 1st, they've played 2 games against teams that have winning records in the conference. It was North Carolina on February 1st and Miami in the final game of the regular season. I forget how many games they've played over that stretch, but those are the only 2 who've had winning records in conference. So you're not really getting good opportunities for resume building wins. Today will be a good opportunity for a resume building win, but it's going to be a tough one. Still, if you go out at 22 wins, 14-6 in the ACC, one of the best teams in the conference all year long, you should have I think you've got a pretty good case for the NCAA tournament. But we'll find that out on Sunday. Between now and then, we're going to watch some more basketball. We're going to watch Pitt take on Duke, and hopefully this team plays loose. What did Blake Hinson's shirt say the other day? Don't worry, folks. Just play loose, play with nothing to lose, and play your game. Stay comfortable. Keep that spirit and that energy of guys like Greg Elliott and Blake Hinson, and have fun out there. I think it'll be fun to watch. We'll see. We'll see. Either way, no matter what happens in this game today, we will be live after the game, probably around 5 o'clock for the post-game show right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you tune in for that. You can join in. We have a chat screen right there on the right-hand side of your screen where you can post your comments and your questions during the show. And I'll read it. We'll go back and forth. It's almost like a talk show, but you don't call in with your phone and we don't hear your voice. We just have that conversation with your comments and your questions. It's pretty fun. We had a good one yesterday after the Georgia Tech game. It was a good time. We'll have one again today after the Duke game. And if they win here, we'll have an evening show tomorrow night after the 7 o'clock game, which is where Pitt will play if they do beat Duke. It's going to be a challenge. I mean, there's no question about it. But, you know, They got one win. Now we'll see if they can get two. All right, make sure you stay tuned to Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting, all right there at Panther-Lair.com. And, of course, message boards with other Pitt fans, hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans. You can talk to them all day, every day. All night last night, Pitt fans were talking about the Georgia Tech game, talking about the Duke game, talking about Jim Boeheim, talking about Jamie Dixon. Whatever's going on that's even somewhat related to Pitt basketball, the Pitt fans are on there talking about on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. It's the best online community of Pitt sports fans that you're going to find, so I highly recommend that you go check it out. Thanks for checking this out today, and I guess we'll get together again in a few more hours. Probably around 5 o'clock tonight, we'll have the Panther-Lair postgame show, and then we'll be back for the Friday edition of the Morning Pitt tomorrow, wrapping up whatever happens, and we'll see what it is. But thanks for watching the video today. We appreciate it. We'll see you back here later tonight for the Panther-Lair postgame show on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.